Looks like the Wi-Fi and everything's working well enough. So we'll see how this goes.
The connection is somewhat spotty.
Absolute worst case scenario, we could call on the phone, I suppose.
And the cell reception in here sucks too.
So it's just a double whammy.
Calling
suppose
on the phone would probably work okay because I've done it before.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
But it's kind of
we'll see.
As places go for a tech fest, I suppose is quite appropriate.
They had this place before. There was a place that required tech fasting, but
But I mean, like it worked out well for a location.
it worked out well.
Hello, everyone.
And we're
First podcast of the Riley's on a Tech Fest era.
yes.
Speaking of which, how is that going so far? You what, 2 weeks in? 3 weeks in?
We are basically 1 week in because
Okay.
the first week we weren't in it yet, and so the second week, yes. But it has been going wonderfully. I have
Good.
enjoyed it much more than I was expecting to.
Does it feel kind of like Koinonia, but extended in some ways?
But indefinite.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it is definite, but like you really have to commit, like, because you get 8 hours of media use a week.
So it really
And-
forces you to prioritize things.
Yes, like calling all of your peoples, and that's mostly all the time you have in a week.
So enough to maintain a acceptable level of human contact.
Precisely. Not that we don't in the house, because that is one of the big points of the house.
Right.
But
But with the
house
outside
occasionally.
peoples.
So I guess what are the so you're on the Tech Fest? What are you guys supposed to like stay in the house most of the time, or can you go out and like do grocery shopping and stuff like that?
There's a fair amount of not being here, but there is also quite a lot of being here. We can go shopping and stuff if we want, but they have kind of the responsibilities divvied up among people in the house. So there's like
Okay.
one group that's responsible for buying all the food for the house.
So
And that
there's
rotates
sort of a
every
communal
week.
living aspect to it where everybody's got a role.
Yes, and that rotates throughout the year. So like we just got done with our chapel cleaning stint
Ooh.
and liturgical functions. And so next week we're back on to floor duty. So we clean
Gotcha.
our floor. And then after that we'll be on kitchen. So and then back to floor. So that's kind of the rotation.
Now there's not really any coursework for this year, right? It's like a formation session.
Yeah,
is
more or less. Yeah. There's some like reading that is assigned, but it's not like assigned.
Right. If
So-
for best experience, read these chapters.
Yes.
That makes sense. So yeah, let's see. Are you guys like the first year or I suppose are you with a mix of guys from other dioceses, or is this just Crookston?
Oh, this is places all over.
Okay.
Okay.
I suppose yeah,
Basically,
being SPS.
SPS program. If there was just Crookston, there would only be 2 of us.
Yeah, that's true. That would get
You can
interesting.
make it if you try, but
Yeah, there's dioceses represented range from Boise, Idaho, Helena,
wow.
Montana, St. Cloud, Crookston, the Archdiocese of St. Paul, Omaha.
So quite a spread, but fairly local.
Yes, fairly
Relatively
local, apart
speaking.
from the Idaho.
Yeah, that's a little bit out there.
yeah. Well,
But the
Idaho's
bishop
a little
out in Idaho was a former rector of SGV, so he knows the place.
That makes sense. Is this the first year that Crookston's doing Propaedeutic?
This is basically the first year that almost anyone is.
Okay, because I know that that's something that, and maybe we've talked about this on the podcast before, but for a refresher, the practice is becoming more and more widespread in seminary
And
formation.
Next year it will be required.
Okay.
Okay.
So they're just kind of easing everybody into it this year in preparation for that.
A lot of bishops have basically just decided to institute the requirement already.
Might as
this,
well.
This program is in its second year, so last year, all of the Helena guys were here doing this.
So by the time it's actually like in force, people will be well used to it.
Yeah, it'll kind of be an expectation.
Okay, that's a good way to do that.
But cool. That sounds like it seems like almost a halftime of sorts in seminary formation, because you have your college seminary guys, a couple of years of major seminary, and then formation year, and then back into.
This is usually supposed to happen before you do anything.
Oh, okay. So right at the
yeah,
beginning.
for me it ends up being halftime, but for most people it's supposed to be before you get rolling.
Okay. So like if you went from college seminary, you would start with this year, then go into your classes.
So if ideally you'll do this even before college seminary.
Okay. That makes
if you're
sense.
one of those people who do college seminary.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
So yes, it's the before instruction is what the Latin literally means.
Is there was there a particular like how did this get started? Where does it trace its origins to?
In Europe they've been doing something like this for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of the idea behind it is sort of like a novitiate for the diocesan priesthood.
Sure.
Right. Yeah, because it's had its roots in like the whole novitiate postulant model has been the case for religious orders for centuries.
Yeah.
It seems like something that works especially well. I mean, if it works for religious orders, it works.
Right.
It's probably
and
works for diocesan priesthood.
The thing that the novitiate does is like gives you a taste of the life
mm-hmm.
and the spirituality. Those are kind of the primary points of it. So to kind of taste the spirituality of the diocesan priesthood and get used to a life of prayer before you start academics is actually super useful.
That seems pretty valuable too.
And
from a
I
kind of
wish I had it.
Sure.
That sounds pretty useful from like a discernment standpoint too. Like before you get like caught up in all the classes and stuff, which are only temporary, like giving you a taste of that spirituality and prayer life. It's like, okay, for your discernment purposes, is this something? I mean, obviously everybody needs to develop a daily habit of prayer and stuff, but like particular, like to give you a taste of what it is particular to priests, so you have a better idea. It's like, okay, this is what my life will kind of look like in the future. So that's a good thing. I'm glad it's going well.
Yeah.
What's happened since the last we spoke?
Did your house get sold from under your feet?
Oh yeah, that was a whole thing.
That's the whole thing that's going on.
So our house is up for sale. Our rental company put it up for sale, and then a week later told us it was up for sale, even though we found out. Maybe they figured we would.
And they only told us it's for sale because, hey, tomorrow we've got somebody we're showing that house.
Although there was like a couple with a baby, and they were only there for like 15 minutes because we barely cleaned the house, so it probably didn't look all that impressive. But the story boils down to, regardless of if they sell the house, our lease, which is up in May, will be honored. So even if they sold the house today, we can stay here until May 31st. So that's a relief, which gives us a lot more time to
Find alternate plans.
Yeah.
Figure out where we're going to be. All that stuff.
So that takes a lot of the stress off of it, because at first it was just like, crap, like all out of nowhere. It's like, do I have to find a new place to live? So yeah, we have about 8 months left.
As of the recording of this podcast, you could be listening to it in the future, and it would be significantly closer
or past. Yeah, assuming
that is
people
the
do the
nature of
backlog.
Recorded media.
So yeah, that's
sounds like Nathan's not on to me.
Oh,
I'm not.
It sounds like I'm hearing your echo off of James. Maybe that's just it, but it doesn't like your voice isn't coming. That's better. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Must have gotten bumped when we were jostling around stuff.
Oh, Well,
because we have the GameCube over there. There's like a joystick over there. There's all kinds of wires and crisscrossy stuff.
yeah, the GameCube is there because we did our first stream earlier this week. That was
the other thing that
a
happened.
successful test, I would say.
Yeah. Started playing through, for those who didn't watch. I mean, there was exactly one person besides John and Isaac who did watch. So thank you to Odin something.
Odin several numbers.
Yep. For watching for the first 20 minutes or so and engaging in the chat. So, yes, twitch.tv/palapapists if you want to watch us stream. We're going to go for Mondays and Wednesdays when possible. So, stay tuned.
Yeah, that was fun.
Perhaps the occasional Saturday to involve.
Yeah, perhaps the occasional Saturday.
Perhaps.
Whilst Riley is on his propedeutic year.
Mm-hmm.
Where we started with I'm doing a playthrough of Twilight Princess, which I haven't played before. We'll probably do that as long as it lasts on one day a week, and then the second day probably something different. We haven't figured that out yet, but yeah, we are finally committing to the streaming thing. So it's all set up now. Troubleshot some technical difficulties, but it's up and running and going pretty well.
Yeah, that was a fun little first test, and it was. I mean,
it proves it works.
Yes.
But yeah, let's see. Anything else major happen? I had homecoming week at work. That was a whole.
Yeah, you were busy at work, and that's
grueling week, which is funny because the majority of the year, I get my work done really fast, and I'm like twiddling my thumbs looking for something to do, and then there's like 3 or 4 weeks where it's just nonstop. Go, 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 go. Work Saturday, stay home Sunday, come back Monday, and that was homecoming week last week. And so as a result of like the extra hours I worked last week, I got Friday off. So that was nice to get I had a long weekend, short weekend, and then another long weekend because Labor Day. That also complicated homecoming week because Labor Day was Monday of homecoming week, which meant I had 4 days to do the amount of work that I needed to get done instead of 5. Because that extra day I worked Saturday, I was out and about. They had like this Hall of Fame banquet and whatnot I had to work, so that's done. And work is going to be, as the principal put it, a delightfully normal schedule from here on out for the next few weeks. So it was fun in a lot of ways, but yesterday I was just kind of like, I don't want to do anything. I just want to sit here. I finished editing a wedding film, so that I'm in a lull there. So
you're in the clear for a couple months.
Yeah, so I'm just chilling. It's been nice.
Yeah, I suppose you mentioned Labor Day that weekend. I went out to central Minnesota and hung out with some cousins. That was a good time. But aside from that, also.
What happened Labor Day weekend?
I moved out.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Speaking of you moving out, I noticed our project in the background of your audible video here.
Is it working?
Does it still work?
Working. One of the hose clamps popped off, so I replaced it, and now it's leaking steam somewhere. So I'll have to open it up and see where that's coming out of and probably fix another clamp. But
okay, but nothing electrical as of right now.
The electrical has all been okay.
Yay. That means I don't have to go down there and fix something.
But we might contract your services once again over Christmas break to do the scale mod.
The scale mod?
Yes. So what they are working on a thing right now that very few people have done. But it's there. You put a little scale on the bottom under the drip tray, so that it automatically shuts off the flow when it reaches your desired output.
That's handy.
That's pretty cool.
But you have to use a different microcontroller, so we'll have to get an STM32 and take out the wires from the Nano and stick it in there. But it shouldn't be anywhere near as much work as the other one was.
Particularly now that we've done the whole thing once, taken it apart, putting it together, we've got a bit of a system.
Yeah.
I'm in the system. I'm a
espresso
machine hacker.
I mean, that's pretty much what we did.
Yeah. It's like, what if we made this better?
Machine.
Well, that's kind of neat. And I'm sure a actual like espresso machine with all of these features would be ridiculously expensive compared to
Prohibitively so.
Probably somewhere in the order of $2,000 for the things that this capacity has.
Now, what is the cost of the materials that the original espresso machine come down to roughly?
Well, if you put all that together, like 700-ish.
So that's all about 60% savings on that?
Yeah.
Or 60% of the cost?
The only downside of this one is it has a rather small boiler. So it's not good for making many drinks to serve many people.
But for a single person. Or
for a single person, it works wonderfully.
Well, that's good.
Speaking of single persons.
We're the Palladium Papists. I'm James.
I'm Nathan. That was
that
me.
Was like, as soon as I saw where that was going, and I was just like, "Let's go."
But also the single persons.
It works for the
for the philosophical we're doing today.
Yes, a philosophical today on Thor: Love and Thunder. I had to think for a second.
In a world where one man will decide whether to pull a lever and kill one man, or not pull a lever and allow 5 people to die, find out in Philosophical.
Yes. Philosophical's the show where we get philosophical about films.
The film in question is Thor: Love and Thunder, which, to be completely honest, I at first didn't know would even be podcast worthy, but upon viewing, it's like, oh, this has got some stuff we can talk about.
There's some substance to this thing. That
Right.
that was my general impression of it watching. The first half hour, I'm like, okay, this is another stupid, overly cheesy Thor movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then as it got on, I'm like, oh,
wait a minute.
okay.
I feel like it has a little more substance to talk about than even Ragnarok had.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Which Ragnarok was fun and all. It's just not exactly podcast worthy.
Yeah. So in Love and Thunder, where do we pick up?
Well, we pick up after Endgame and all that stuff happened, right?
Yep.
Where
Thor's off with the Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, Thor's off with the Guardians of the Galaxy. He's getting back in shape. He's trying to become a better Thor than he was in Endgame, which was kind of his low point.
Mm-hmm.
So he's, off with the Guardians of the Galaxy doing their thing where they just follow whatever distress signal they get and go try and help out. And he's being this helping wandering god of thunder.
They're subtly, not so subtly, trying to get rid of him because as much as he's powerful, he kind of cramps on their style, and it's not a great fit. But they manage to part amicably.
Right. Particularly since they get a lot of distress calls. Pardon me.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them happens to be from his friend Sif, who's like an Asgardian warrior, and they're friends from back in the day. So he's like, "Hey, I've got to go help her. You go help all the other people in the galaxy if you want."
We're like, "Oh no, really? Don't say it ain't so. Oh, guess we're leaving now. Goodbye." Yes.
So he shows up to where Sif is, and she's like, "Hey Thor, I'm very injured. Also, there is a fellow named Gore, the God Butcher, who is out to kill all of the God figures in the galaxy because Gore, his backstory is left pretty kind of vague, but the point is he was a devoted follower of the Sun God
on some planet,
and there's a terrible either war or famine or something or other, but he gets lost in the desert with his daughter. His wife dies. His daughter dies in his arms. He's at the end of his rope. He finds an oasis in the middle of the desert where his sun god is just chilling, eating and drinking and having a good time and celebrating the death of a guy who was trying to assassinate him with a relic called the Necro Sword. And he's like, "Oh yeah, Necro Sword is a real bad business because it's like a god-slaying weapon." And Gore's like, "Aren't you gonna help the people who follow you and stuff? We kind of care."
He's like, "That's kind of your job to die for my cause,
And that's
sorry.
So Gore gets mad and gets infected and by the Necro Sword and becomes the God Butcher. and starts with killing his own gods. So now he's on a deicide. Yeah, he's on a deicide spree now. So meanwhile, another meanwhile, we're back on Earth, right? And there's like somewhere in Iceland or something, there's New Asgard established, but elsewhere from that, we have Jane Foster, who is Thor's
Natalie
girlfriend
Portwoman.
from the first two movies. Natalie Portwoman.
Long may she reign.
Well, not very long because she's got cancer.
Oops.
Oopsie. So she's trying to be the physicist who, solves wormholes and helps people and stuff and does a bunch of cool stuff, but she's also got cancer, so that limits her ability to do things and the time with which she has to do it.
Yep.
Her and Thor have broken up long since because he was just off doing galaxy stuff, and she's like, "You're never here for me when I need you, and I'm never here for you because I'm doing other things too."
They grew apart. At a point where it was necessary for them to commit further to relationship, and they were both kind of scared to do it.
Right. Anyway, so one day she's sick with cancer and stuff, and it's terminal, right? There's no way around it, and she's like, but I have to do something with my life. I don't have a lot of life left to do stuff with. So how could I possibly extend this? And she's like, wait a minute. I know Viking people. I know Viking gods. Why don't I go to New Asgard and see if I can get help? And so that's where she goes. Anyway, so after Thor saves Sif, he brings her back to New Asgard on Earth, meets up with his friend Valkyrie. And Korg tags along with him, the rock guy from Ragnarok. So he's talking with Valkyrie, and she's all like, "Hey, Thor." Actually, no, he shows up at New Asgard, and that's about the same time that Gore the God Butcher shows up, actually.
And he summons a bunch of shadow monsters, and the Asgardians are fighting them off.
Yeah, so Thor joins the fight, and he's like, "Hi, I'm here to help you save from the shadow monsters." And then there's a Mjolnir shows up. It's like, "Hey, this is my old hammer. It broke in Ragnarok, but now it's fixed. What's going on?" Turns out it's being wielded by Jane Foster, who is now has big guns and a cape, and she's all Thor-like. And he's like, "Whoa, this is weird."
See my ex-hammer and my ex-girlfriend in the same place.
And so they fight the shadow monsters, and they fight Gore the God Butcher, and they chase him off, and he runs away, but not before using shadow spider monsters to snatch all of the children in New Asgard and take them away to the Shadow Realm.
They lost in Yu-Gi-Oh!
They lost a Yu-Gi-Oh! Battle. So that's a cause for concern for the people of Asgard.
They're being held hostage.
Yes, they're being held hostage in the Shadow Realm, and they confirm this by Thor, talking with the son of Heimdall, who was the guy who ran the Rainbow Bridge Bifrost, and he had also the ability to just see everywhere and everything. So they communicate, and it's like, "Hey, don't worry, kids, we're coming for you. We have a plan. We have a plan, right?"
Yeah, we're making a plan.
Yeah, we're making a plan. And so and so Thor's like, "Hey, okay, plan is, this guy's a god butcher, right? Why don't we go talk to other gods and get a whole posse rounded up so that we can fight this guy and save the godly race?" And they're like, "Cool, let's do that." So they modify a boat with the Bifrost abilities of Thor's axe called Stormbreaker. They tie some screaming goats to the front to pull the boat.
Stormbreaker, ordinarily he can summon the Bifrost with Stormbreaker, but he seems to have a bit of a personality and is a little miffed that Thor is making eyes at his old hammer.
Right.
It's kind of funny, actually, the way they do it.
The screaming goats, however, are not all that funny.
No. They
just got annoying.
They're just there.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so they start heading off to the palace city of the god people, and Thor's like, "Okay, let's do this. This is great, good." And of course, him and Jane are a little tense, led
by, of course, the mighty Zeus, Muscle Crow.
with a
Except
vaguely
not
Greek
so
accent.
muscly anymore.
Big Mac Muscle Crow.
He's got like he's got a 6-pack printed on his armor the way that old Romans do, covering his one ab. I assume that is.
He has this powerful lightning bolt weapon.
Yes.
There's definitely not the lightning thief vibes going on here.
Nope.
Right. So yeah, they get to the palace council room, and Zeus is all like, "Hey, I'm Zeus. What we're gonna do? We're gonna have our council planning our parties for us and our just decadent way of life up here because nobody cares about people on Earth." And Thor's like, "Wait a minute. I thought our whole purpose as gods was to protect people and to help our people." And he's like, "Nope, that's not how we do." And Thor's like, "Okay, but at the very least, can I like borrow your cool lightning bolt?" And Zeus is like, "No, I don't want you to go after Gore because that just is going to lead him back here. We're all scared of him.
You know where we are, and if he gets you, then he's going to find out where we are, and we're safe here. We're in our little cocoon. We don't want to."
Besides that, there's no way Gore's gonna get to eternity, so it's no big deal.
Say what?
Yeah, turns out actually Gore's real plan is to wake some primordial deity thing, who's been just asleep for a long time and is like sealed in like some dimension where if you reach him, you can get a wish. First person to talk to him gets a wish, which is like neat. We don't want him to do that because then he's just gonna wish all the gods would die, and
bad news.
That's just genocide.
And
that's
they
like
at some point, I forget when, discovered that the reason like Stormbreaker can summon the Bifrost, and the Bifrost is the key to opening
they
this
learned that
vault.
when they get to the Shadow Realm.
Okay,
That's much later. Right now they got to fight their way out of God City, fight Zeus, grab his thunderbolt, fight a bunch
Get
of
out
gold
of there.
guys. Korg blows up, but they take his face because his face is the only part of him that needs to stay alive. So they get in their boat after stealing a lightning boat and fly away, headed toward the Shadow Realm. It's here that Thor and Jane have a bit of a heart-to-heart, where Thor's like, "Yeah, all this time after losing you, and after then having my mom die, my dad die, my brother died,
my planet blew up.
I failed to save half the universe. My planet blew up. I've been a mess, and so I'm just emotionally closed off to a lot of people." But at the beginning,
I don't want to. Yeah, Peter Quill pointed out to him, it's better to feel crappy having tried to love than to never love at all.
It's better to love and have lost than
Yes.
to never loved at all, basically.
Basically.
Except said in the very Star-Lord way.
Yep.
And so Thor's like, I want to feel crappy about you. And he's like, what? He's like, I mean, yeah. And this is where Jane comes clean with him. It's like, yeah, but I have cancer. You're going to lose me anyway. And Thor's like, okay, this is a mess, but we'll make do with the time we have, one step at a time, right? Live in the moment, right? Live every day like it's your last. So they go to the Shadow Realm, and they show up, try and find the children, but the children aren't there. Turns out it's a trap laid by Gore. Who would have thought? Because turns out your shadow powers are even more powerful in the Shadow Realm.
Mm-hmm. And the Bifrost is the key to opening this vault.
Right. Jane finds like the notes and it's like, oh, Bifrost, he needs that. Oops.
So he doesn't want Thor. He wants Stormbreaker.
So she runs into the room Thor's in, grabs Stormbreaker and throws it off of the comically tiny planet. Mm-hmm. And Thor's like, is there a good reason you threw my axe away? And she's like, yeah, because he needs it. But then he ambushes them. He uses shadow monsters to, wrap them up and get them all subdued. And he's like, hey, Thor, could you call your hammer for me? Because I need it. And he's like, no. And he's like, well, then I'm going to taunt
okay, guess they'll die.
Guess they'll die. And if you want to be like all the other gods and abandon them, go ahead, be my guest.
He's like, oh, I'm different.
I'm different. So he does summon his axe, and they have a big old battle about it, and it's a whole thing.
But eventually they get, sent back to Earth, and
yeah,
Gore
Thor's trying to like in an attempt to extract everybody from the planet to escape to Earth. He summons Bifrost, and everybody else gets sucked up, but Gore grabs Stormbreaker just as Thor's getting sucked up, and so now he has Stormbreaker. It's like, cool, I got the key. So they all get back to Earth. Everybody's badly injured, and Jane, in particular, is not doing so hot.
Nope.
Because turns out, every time she's been picking up the hammer, it's basically been resetting her chemotherapy, so she is in worse shape than ever. Using the hammer's killing her as much as it's
accelerating the cancer, basically.
Essentially. And this leaves Thor to be like, okay, Jane, you're not coming. Valkyrie, you're not coming because you got stabbed. I'm going to take the lightning bolt that it was Zeus's, and I'm going to leave Mjolnir here because reasons. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to go save the kids and get Stormbreaker back even if it kills me. So let's go do this. Jane, of course, objects. She's like, I thought, what about all that doing stuff together? What about living in the moment? He's like, yeah, but I want you to have moments to live. So, see ya.
I'll be back. Basically.
So he goes up to the place where Gore is opening the gateway to eternity, and that's where all the children are. Thor shows up. It's like, okay, he's summoning shadow monsters. I need an army. Don't have a god army. All I have is kids behind me. So here's what I'm gonna do. Everybody, grab whatever thing lying around that you can use as a weapon, and then he uses his god powers that he apparently has to say, whoever holds these weapons shall for this day,
for a limited time only,
possess the power of Thor. And boom, you've got an army of Asgardian children using all manner of just rubble and debris and a toy bunny to fight shadow monsters, and it's a grand old time. And then Thor goes up to Gore. Lightning bolt clashes against sword. There's this big epic battle with them, and it's tight. It's close. Thor nearly dies, but then Mjolnir shows up because Jane shows up because Jane was like, I've come to help you. And Thor's like, come on, Jane, you're gonna die though. She's like, no time to talk, let's fight. So they
realize if they break the Necro sword, that's sort of it's sort of eating away at Gore and causing him to die. So if they break the Necro sword, the source of his power, then he'll die. Right.
And so that's what they do. They end up breaking the Necro sword, and Gore, it falls limp to the ground, but the portal is opened. So that's not cool. Thor tosses the kids the Stormbreaker, so they can summon Bifrost. I had Bifrost stuck in my head.
And go home.
So they all go home, and Thor and Jane chase Gore into the Eternity Void world. But Jane is all dying and stuff, and Gore's almost up to this space being who's just kind of chill sitting there like Zen. And Thor's like, hey, Gore, could you not kill all the gods? And he's like, why not?
Choose love, man.
Choose love, man. If you're
like,
dying
if you're
anyway,
kill me, fine. I'm just gonna go spend time with the woman I love before she dies.
And so that
Gore is also free of the influence of the
right
Necro sword,
because it was the sword whispering, "Kill all the gods," to him all the time. But now free of the sword's influence and wanting a final moment of peace before he passes on, he asks Eternity to bring back his daughter. So his daughter comes out and holds her father as he dies, paralleling what Thor's doing over there with Jane, because Jane dies of just her wounds and of cancer because now it's just too much. So with both of them dead, Thor takes Gore's daughter named Love, and they go. Everybody on Asgard
sort of adopts her now.
Yeah, everybody, all the Asgardians on Earth have their kids back, and they're doing good. And now Thor has a daughter/partner in crime to help him continue to protect those who cannot protect themselves.
In coming back, she's sort of has these powers of her own now
because she came from eternity, so she has eternity god powers, sort of thing. So that's kind of the gist of Thor: Love and Thunder.
Yep. What are some of the things we liked?
I was pleasantly surprised that it was a meaningful film at all.
Yeah.
I'll echo that.
I had come to not expect a great deal from Phase 4 Marvel.
Yeah. This is definitely one of the highlights.
Yeah, like, apart from WandaVision, this is like the only thing that kind of had some meat to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah, that was pleasantly surprising. We'll get into like the the beauty and the creative work that went into it, but it's a quite visually pleasing movie to watch. In short,
I mean, as far as cool stuff segment goes, I'll say I like so Thor 1 and 2 are very ye olde Viking Norse lore, very kind of grounded in their aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Ragnarok and Love and Thunder take the Viking aesthetic of metal albums from the 80s and turn that into a movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes for the soundtrack also. So it's like it has this more fun, bright aesthetic and vibe to it. Even Thor's costume, like halfway through the movie, I'm like, wait a minute, that's bright blue and bright gold and vivid red cape. This is comic Thor.
Yep.
Finally.
Mm-hmm. And the first scene where he's on that planet with the giant glass thing, where it's just like, it's just, someone took the paint palette and threw it at the wall. Like, it's just,
and it's
color
it's interesting because there's a
everywhere.
lot of detail and color, but it's not like noisy and hard to look at. It's like,
Right.
dang, this is like watching a painting in some ways.
And it's kind of like representing the sort of attitude and persona that Thor is trying to show the world. Like, it's the facade.
Mm-hmm.
Matches perfectly this kind of colorful, gung-ho, comedic,
He's trying to
lighthearted
put on the personality
face.
of the Guardians of the Galaxy, but it's not quite working.
Right. It just doesn't fit. And he ends up shattering it
Mm-hmm.
without really meaning to.
Mm-hmm.
As he shatters his, kind of the vibe of the Guardians.
Yep.
It's a nice little parallel that they did there.
There's a lot of neat parallels. I kind of liked how Gore using the sword was eating away at him and killing him slowly, doing evil. But Jane using the hammer was also slowly killing her, but she was doing good, right? One was a self-consuming destruction, a self-destruction. The other was a self-sacrifice, particularly right at the end when it's like she has nothing left to give but to give herself to help save Thor and the kids, right?
Yep.
So I kind of not thought that was a neat parallel they had. And also I only remembered as I was watching this movie, it's like, oh yeah, that's how Jane Foster Thor worked in the comics. She had cancer and that was making it worse. I forgot about that. So it was a really neat way to A, bring back the character, and B, lay her to rest.
Yeah. Because she just sort of disappeared in the last movies.
Yeah.
And literally since Thor 2, she has not been in anything.
Mm-hmm.
They managed to kind of tell us why, essentially. In a way that made a good deal of character and narrative sense.
And it wasn't like, hi, I'm Girl Thor, I'm better than you, right? Mm-hmm. Which is kind of a bad habit that comic book media can have, where it's like, hi, I'm the Mary Sue version of you. And it's like, that's great and all, but why?
Yep. She's still very much Jane Foster, but with Thor powers now.
Which makes a very interesting character relationship with Thor.
Because they're on a sort of level playing field in terms of power. I mean, they've always he's always admired like her
mind,
and
ability
her
to solve
intelligence.
problems.
And but now she's
got guns.
Yes.
Natalie Portwoman put the work in to get guns for this movie, and I have mad respect for her.
Mm-hmm. Natalie Portwoman and her joined the Python Club for making this movie. Let's see what else because I feel like more is gonna kind of bleed into the transcendental.
Yeah, that's most of what's worth talking about in this movie is in that. So
I guess let's just kick it off. Truth. What truths are in Thor: Love and Thunder? Love involves sacrifice and loss.
And pain. It hurts to love people.
And it's sort of in the never-ending human desire to have your cake and eat it too. Thor is sort of caught in this tension of, by trying to, at first their relationship, when has a chance to go deeper, he sees like a kid and out in public, and he's like, maybe should we try to start a family? But then they get scared and split off. In like being afraid to lose what they had in the moment, they end up losing their relationship. And then Thor wants to try to do that again, by telling Jane, okay, don't pick up Mjolnir, you're going to die faster. But she understands that loving you have to give of yourself to love. And at first that's something they were unwilling or unable to do, but they both kind of learned this lesson. And so Thor, understands this and accepts Jane's self-sacrifice and loves her all the more for having done that in her memory.
Because
she
being sad
doesn't
that
mean
she
so
died.
much to him that he can't let her go. Like his love kind of reaches its completion by allowing her to go.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Because he realizes being sad that she died is better than feeling empty because he was never in her life.
Mm-hmm. So that's like the big thing. It's interesting too how like his character went from, because the thing that the movie acknowledges, like this and Ragnarok acknowledge, they don't like pretend the first two Thor movies never happened, but they sort of do something different with Thor and advance his character in ways the first two movies didn't. As
Because the
represented
first two
by
Thor
the
movies,
plays.
he was kind of flat.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he was big, strong Thunder Man who beat up, trolls with his hammer.
Yeah, basically the Avengers movies and the last two Thor movies like tore him down, and it's like, okay, what's left? So at first he's kind of faced with that's trying to fill this empty hole in his life by going around with the Guardians of the Galaxy and trying to be all like, swashbuckly and rad, but it's sort of like you said, a facade. It doesn't really work. Because he had tried this thing where he's like, okay, I'm the king of Asgard now, I have duties to do. It's like, well, okay, everything was taken from me. What if I try to be this lone
Space pirate,
and that doesn't work. And so he sort of brought back full circle into responsibility
for the people of Asgard.
And love. And he now has a daughter to raise, essentially, at the end of the film.
It also, Thor's contrast with the rest of the pantheon of other god figures is interesting, where Thor has adopted, ever since the Avengers in his first movie, this dedication to protecting people who fighting for the good of those who can't fight good, as Korg puts it, I believe.
Yep.
Where it's like, I have this status, this power, and this responsibility to this people who I am the king of, essentially.
He
I
tries
need
to hand
to
it off
carry
to
this.
Valkyrie, but it doesn't. It's like,
It doesn't suit her well. She's a horseback riding, spear throwing woman.
yep.
And of course, she's still king back on Asgard because Thor's off in his space trailer with Love, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting to see Thor kind of, and even Jane, honestly, embody what the gods should be versus what they actually are, which is a bunch of self-indulgent jerks.
Mm-hmm. Which is a accurate assessment of like the different pantheons that they portray.
That they display, especially the Greeks. Like,
Yeah.
Zeus being the king of the butt heads up there, it's like, yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. This is nothing like Disney's Hercules, and it's good.
How do you mean Hercules?
Who shows up in the post credits?
Because Marvel's Hercules needs to fight Thor. Apparently, they're forming the '90s Avengers with White Vision, and I think Black Knight was in Eternals. Not like I care.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Also in pantheon god place. There's a couple large people, like I believe, show up in Eternals at some point. So
Oh yeah.
that may have been a sideways reference to that. Not that I've seen the movie. I don't care.
The other thing you pointed out last night after we watched it, Nathan, was like how the mechanics of Mjolnir work. Like being worthy of the power of Thor means being willing to sacrifice your life, and that's why Jane Foster is worthy to be Thor.
Yeah,
and that's why Steve Rogers was worthy to be Thor.
He was worthy ever since the first time he said, "I could do this all day."
Yeah, well, and then that's why Thor was worthy to be Thor in the end, is because
it came down to him versus the destroyer robot from the first movie, where he's like, "Hey, Loki, you're after me. If it's me you're after, leave everybody else alone."
And in a certain way, like Jane, in sacrificing herself to the point of and actually dying, becomes more of a Thor than Thor was in that regard.
I mean, in the mid-credit scene, she goes to Valhalla because she died in battle. So,
yep,
neat,
interesting implications there, but we won't go into that.
right?
Let's see. What are some other main elements of truth that we can touch on in Thor?
Kind of hit like Thor's own personal, emotional arc.
Yeah,
throughout this movie, it's just kind of like him, just his approach to pain, not even responsibility, and not even with regard to relationship, just like solely interiorly.
You see some healing happen for Thor in this movie, which
he like takes this approach of numbing and distracting and kind of in a very bachelor-like way, going and just trying to forget about or numb his desire for something more.
He has to live for something.
Right, because he was, he's the son of Odin. He's supposed to be the king of Asgard.
Mm-hmm.
But he kind of shirked that responsibility out of this kind of juvenile, adolescent desire to kind of invent himself. And as he goes over the course of like Ragnarok and Love and Thunder,
Avengers films,
he kind of gets that attitude broken out of him, like you
thrown
said,
back
he's
in his face, basically.
He's torn apart. He is like deprived of every possible avenue out of which he could escape, and he's
that's
like
sort of how
forced to behold himself.
That's kind of how Thor learns things, because he's not able to understand what it means to be Thor and worthy until he has his powers stripped away in the first movie. And nothing really happens in the second movie. And then the third movie, he's like, okay, I accept the responsibility of being king of Asgard. And then Avengers Infinity War saga happens.
And he fails to kill Thanos. And that pain, he tries to drown in beer, which does not work. But
beer chips in Fortnite.
Yeah. Literally. He, I think he sort of learns to understand, like, through his inadequacy, his own, like, what he is really capable of. Because he has like this deep power, like, he's the god of thunder after all, so he's got these lightning powers and all that are inherent to him. It's not just from his hammer, from his external, like, he learns all these things about himself, but he's still kind of forced to learn things the very hard way, and that stays consistent
because he is ontologically the least human of the Avengers.
Yes.
Right.
And
so
becomes
he
more
has to
human.
work the hardest to learn how to become human.
Yes. And he does, over the course of these movies, do that in a large way. And it's cool to see that Thor has, character development through the last few installments, because, the first two movies, nothing really beyond, the first one obviously kind of
becoming worthy. The second one, it was just kind of like trusting Loki and then not trusting Loki and then trusting Loki again and then not trusting him again and trusting Loki.
Yeah.
A lot of it, the second movie, and even later, was very centered around Loki. It's like he was the main character of Dark World.
Yeah. The God Butcher, I suppose,
stands opposite to Thor as the single father, and what that looks like.
He's sort of the Richard Dawkins atheist on steroids.
God's dead and I killed him.
Yeah, well, that'd be Nietzsche on steroids.
Oh, okay, my bad.
with a necro sword, but like this, I like how they've managed to stick to the idea of demigods being these powerful, non-divine creatures.
Mm-hmm.
they keep that consistent. You didn't see any representatives of the major religions in those in the Hall of the Gods or whatever.
Which was like, phew, that was respectful.
Yeah. Glad you didn't go there, movie. But it sort of addressed like this idea, like, yeah, if I suppose it's more of a rebuttal of paganism, because it's like, okay, well, if all these really self-absorbed, power-hungry maniacs in the sky were in charge, yeah, you would have a
Time
reason
to give the
despair.
award to the person who had the most human sacrifices this year.
Yeah. Sort of the callous, selfish, degenerate way they carry about themselves. Like, Gore is in a way justified in his anger towards the demigods.
But also, he kind of takes the extreme of what Thor does, where he loses everything and has this great deal of pain and tries to seek revenge on an entire race in order to quench that,
Yep.
in order to numb that, right? He's not processing his pain correctly. But it's to an extreme that is actively
Which
harming
Thor
him.
also kind of did in his own way with the Jotuns.
Very much so in the first one.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's a...
What's the interesting parallel there?
So I think this movie does a really good job of having a lot of really subtle parallels between the major players. I do feel like the sudden turn of, oh, I'll wish for love then instead. Well, it was a little sudden, but it fit thematically.
If they set it up well.
They did.
You know, at the beginning,
Well
at
enough.
the intro of the movie. You know, well enough. Yeah, they did what they needed to get that across. I suppose we should move on into goodness at some point.
You should.
What is good in Love and Thunder?
I think
Thor
like
and Jane are good. They get
Yeah.
there, at least.
Yeah. They're both flawed people who made mistakes in their relationship, and it was sort of a mutual breakup. But they both still genuinely care for each other, and by the end of the movie, truly love each
they
other.
just both wanted to forget that at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Because of their sort of selfishness.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But they both set aside their selfishness so that the other may live more fully, or as the case may be, die
Well.
die well. Which is a rather noble way for that relationship to end.
Yeah.
Relationship to end.
I also like Valkyrie in this movie. She's not comfortable being king of Asgard, but she does it because she has to, and she's the best suited.
It makes it a tourist attraction.
she kind of does, but it's
She doesn't. Nothing really happens for her character other than just kind of being aware.
she's a constant,
And
kind of
being
like Korg.
something of a mediator between Thor and Jane on the trip.
Yeah.
Right.
So she does serve that purpose.
And then Korg's just fourth wheeling like, "Hello, hey bro, I'm Korg."
Yep.
Hello, I'm a gay rock.
That seems to be the case for like every time I see Taika Waititi in a movie besides Free Guy. He's just sort of that background character who's like, "Hey, what's up? I'm here. I'll crack jokes. I'll be fun."
And also am Hitler.
Oh yeah, except for that. Yeah, mine is Jojo Rabbit.
That's Jojo Rabbit.
Yeah.
Also, I liked when Thor was talking to Heimdall's son.
Oh yeah.
That was just like him growing into a leader figure, and also having this, putting on a brave face for the kids. Like whenever you involve kids, the stakes suddenly get icky.
Yeah.
You know.
He literally empowers the kids to help them. He doesn't just save the day. He empowers the kids to win their freedom. Leads by example. Literally turning them all into little Thors and having a lightning bolt shooting stuffed rabbit.
So yeah.
And Thor's like sort of adoptive fatherhood of of love is a good thing.
At the end, yeah.
It's a good way to end the movie. So yeah, lots of good stuff in Love and Thunder. Beauty. We touched on some of the aesthetics. Very like in the era of visual effects sweatshops and mediocre results. This movie, stylistically, aesthetically, is very fun to watch and very pretty.
Yeah. It's got that It's like a comic book that moves.
The sequence where they're in like the Shadow Realm, where it's just light and dark with the
With like, I love how whenever they use like Mjolnir, there's a little bit of blue. Whenever they use the lightning, there's a little bit of yellow. Like there is color. It's just coming from these objects of power that break through the shadow.
Yep. It's a cool set piece and a sequence overall.
Also, I think Gore's eyes like glowed orange.
Yep, they
too.
did.
So it's like it drew attention to right where you needed to look.
Apparently you were saying like Gore in the comics didn't have a nose.
Yeah, he's an alien that doesn't have a nose in the comics, and that
They
upset some people.
They let him
when
have
they
a
revealed
nose
it.
in this probably so he wouldn't like cut it off for the role, because he'll gain like 400,000 pounds to be the sandworm in Dune, for example, or lose however many pounds he did for that one movie. So they probably wanted to hide that fact from him so he wouldn't just like go and cut his nose off.
Or to make the makeup or VFX department a little cheaper.
Yeah.
Or to actually have the actor be recognizable.
And probably just so people wouldn't be like, this guy's just Voldemort.
Probably. Or look too much like the guy from Endgame.
The sorcerer dude, I don't remember his name.
I don't remember it either. He had a name, I think.
Probably. One of the
The guy that
children of
worked for
Thanos.
Thanos.
Yeah.
Anyway. But like, yeah, that's like the music choice also was really fun. I like how the last
Sweet Child of Mine.
Sweet Child
being
of
the
Mine.
theme. That was a nice fit.
That was a very clever use of that song.
Yep.
Because not only is that song about an old love, literally, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like in the lyrics you read, it's about a past relationship. It also, Sweet Child of Mine, he adopts a child at the end.
Mm-hmm.
The
And it
reason-
reminds him of the the woman he loved.
It's all great. But
Yep. It's like, oh wow, yeah, they didn't just throw that in there for the recognizability and marketing. It fits with the visual aesthetic as well, like you said, with like the metal.
Yeah,
elements.
it's less old dusty book Norse mythology and more metal album Norse mythology.
Mm-hmm.
This is, yeah,
Masters of the Universe almost.
a little He-Man,
Yeah,
a little bit.
they threw a little bit of that in there. But yeah, solid outing on those counts.
Yeah, one of the better additions to Marvel Phase 4,
What
which
Unity?
isn't saying much, but
Right. Unity, what draws everything together? Love and responsibility.
love and thunder.
Yeah.
Anthropology,
Okay.
love and responsibility,
Okay.
which is mostly about anthropology.
Makes sense.
Sweet Child.
What is a human being? What are we made for?
What are we
Love.
doing?
And what does that take? Responsibility.
Everything.
Who are those guys? What are they up to? What's he doing?
They're in that like reflective water world with Eternatus and or with Eternity, I mean, and
Which is an
Thor's
interesting
like
parallel to like the Soulstone realm.
a little bit. Wait, I was about to
And
say,
also the Promised
Jane,
Neverland.
did you do it? Yes. What did it cost?
Everything. Actually,
But
though,
actually, though,
yeah, it's main keeps that consistent.
so yeah,
But yes, love and responsibility
keeps the main thing,
And thunder.
and
and
thunder.
thunder. Yeah, gotta keep that in there.
A lot of thunder.
It's funny. It's funny how like you sort of references like, oh yeah, Zeus is so cool. I basically like based my whole thing off of him. He's lightning. I'm thunder.
And it's interesting. We have 3 different thunder weapons in the entire movie. You've got
Yeah,
the lightning
Mjolnir.
bolt they steal from Zeus,
Yep.
Stormbreaker, and Mjolnir, and Thor uses all of them
Mm-hmm.
at different points in the movie.
And he's so worthy of Mjolnir because he picks it up. He's like, okay,
Okay, good.
just checking. And Stormbreaker gets
Stormbreaker's-
jealous, slides into frame.
That was a funny little addition to give the hammers or the weapons personalities.
Yeah, they
that
didn't-
wasn't really
They
present.
didn't overplay it, which was nice, but like they did it in key moments, so it's quite comedic. So I liked that.
Yeah, overall solid film.
Anything else we want to add before we wrap stuff up? Alrighty then. Well, thanks for listening to the Palladium Papists. You can listen to us on Spotify, Stitcher, and Apple Podcasts. Please leave a rating to let us know what you think of the show, and follow us on Twitter and Facebook and twitch.tv/Palapapists. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, complaints, or suggestions for future episodes, email us at palladiumpapists@gmail.com, and we will talk to you again in the next... No, we'll talk to you again next time. No promises. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.